Liberty friends, what's happening? This is your host of Felony Friday, John Odermatt, coming at you real quick before today's show to give you a very important reminder to please consider, if you have not already done, join the Lions of Liberty Pride. With the Lions of Liberty Pride, we are always delivering the best and the brightest minds, bringing you bonus content and unique things happening. Everything from watching a little beer pong tournament on the weekend to Conspiracy Corner and Degenerate Gamblers and bonus episodes with our guests. Also, the upcoming, our third Libertarian presidential debate that we're having next week. The last two entrants were decided by our Lions of Liberty Pride members. We do perks like that all the time, so we're always bouncing things off our Pride members. We have for our $25 a month and up Pride members, we actually have monthly calls, and we talk about all kinds of different things, but we also brainstorm about the show and take ideas. We bounce ideas off of them. So it's a great experience. I highly encourage you to join the Lions of Liberty Pride. Go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. What is Felony Friday? Felony Friday is a show where every single week we're going to do a deep dive and we're going to examine and expose injustice in the broken criminal justice system. Now, if this is your first time listening to Felony Friday, your first time listening to any of the shows we have here on Lions of Liberty, sit back, relax, enjoy the show, put your feet up. If you're driving, please don't put your feet up. But if you've been back several times, if this is a regular habit of listening, why haven't you subscribed? Or maybe you have subscribed. Thank you if you subscribed. But if you haven't, please do so. Whatever podcasting app you're listening on, please just scroll up to the top there, punch that subscribe button, and you'll get every single episode of the Lions of Liberty podcast and of Felony Friday delivered to your little listening device. And also, if you really enjoy what you're hearing here, please think about giving us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcast, especially if you listen there, because it helps with the algorithms and all that crazy stuff. Without further ado, let's get rolling with today's show. My guest today on Felony Friday is Albert Edwards. Albert was convicted of a non-violent drug offense back in 1994, and at the time he was sentenced to 440 months. We'll get into the details of the case. It's a crazy case, crazy things happening. Ultimately, he was convicted and sentenced based on drugs that his co-defendants in the case had sold to an undercover agent. Albert did not sell to the agent, but ended up doing more time than any of his co-defendants. He was released from prison April 12th, 2019, after serving nearly 26 years. Albert, welcome to Felony Friday.
How you doing? Thanks, John.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on the show, and I'm glad you're here to share your story. I know we were talking in the pre-show chat here that you're friends with Carl Fort, who was on the show probably maybe 2-3 months ago. But it's always good to have more people coming on the show shining a light on injustice. And I've read a little bit about your case, and there's a whole lot of injustice happening. So I want to dig into those details. Before we do that, though, if we could turn the page back to before you got arrested, before you did time in prison, if you could just kind of, to give the audience an idea of, who you are, if you could share kind of where you grew up, what your, early years were like, stuff like that.
Okay. Name's Albert Edwards. I was born in Huntington, New York, which is on Long Island. And that was in 1969. And my mom was born down here in Illinois, Raphael, Illinois. But she had migrated up there, her and my aunt. And me, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. But my 2 oldest sisters and my oldest brother, including me, we were all born in Long Island, New York. So we ended up coming down here to Rockford, Illinois. I want to say maybe 72. No, I'm gonna say 73, 73. And I've been down here ever since. Of course, by us moving down here, my father stayed up there. I never knew him, so I grew up without a dad. My mom raised me along with my two brothers and my two sisters, and my mom, she was a heck of a provider, a single woman raising five kids, and we always kept a roof over our head and food, clothes, and everything. She was a great mom. Probably with me, as just the older I get, I never really had that father figure in my life. You know what I'm saying? So just really the older I got, the little more kind of loose and wild that I got, coming up.
So let's talk through, what happened when you were arrested. Can you lay out sort of the situation leading up to that? How you got into that situation?
Okay. Well, wow, the situation. Okay, I was arrested July 28th, 1993. I was arrested on a federal indictment, and what led up to the case was there was and you had said an agent, but he was actually an informant.
I got you.
Yeah, his name was Melvin Jones, and he had committed he had stuck up a credit union. He had robbed a credit union. I want to say like it was in April of '93, and he got caught the same day. Him and another accomplice, and once he got caught for that, he told the FBI agents, he was like, "Well, I know all the guys in the streets of Rockford who were dealing drugs, so help me, I'll help you guys." And one of the names that he gave, that told the agents about, was my childhood friend, Michael Henderson. So fast forward to like June of '93, the end of June, equipped with a body recorder, Melvin Jones came over to Mike Henderson's house to set him up on a drug deal. And the first day he came over there was June 28th. Yeah, June 28th, 1993. He came to Mike's house 4 separate times. And Mike was never home that day. I was at Mike's house 2 of the 4 times that day. So I seen Melvin Jones the second time he came over and the 4th time he came over.
Did you know him?
Yeah, I knew him.
Yeah.
I knew him. He was from our neighborhood, so we, and the thing about him, Melvin Jones, he had like a long history of doing stuff in the streets and getting incarcerated for it and everything. And based on that, he was able, to. Well, I remember one of the things the prosecutor said at my trial. He was like, it would be okay if we could send a preacher around these guys, but you got to send one of their own. You got to send ones who's in that lifestyle. So I always remember that. But that was Melvin Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came over that day 4 times on June 28th, attempting to make contact with Mike Henderson to set this deal up, but he never made contact with Mike. So he ended up going, I think, the 4th time he seen me, he had asked me for Mike's pager number, which I gave to him, but I was like, I've been paging him all day. He probably won't call you back, but here, you can try. I gave him the pager number. Mike never called him back. He didn't answer. So now when he went back and he told the agents, he was like, hey, that last guy I was talking to, and my nickname back then was Bubba. He was like, hey, I was talking to Bubba. He had a gun on him when I was talking to him. So the agent said, okay, well, when you go over there tomorrow, if you see this Bubba or anybody with any weapons, try to engage them in a conversation so we can get it on tape. So Mike, it was, like I said, he never made contact with Mike on June 28th, but Mike was told that, hey, man, Melvin came looking for you, like that. So the next day, I ended up spending the night at Mike's house. So the next day, that morning, Melvin Jones came back, and I opened the door for him. I answered the door. Mike was home this time, so I let him in, and I went back in Mike's room, and I was like, hey, Mike, Melvin's out here for you. So when I came back through, walking through the kitchen, he said to me, he was like, Bub, what's that, a 9? And when he said, I was like, yeah. And I walked through the kitchen. I went back to playing the video game. And Mike came in the kitchen, and they engaged in a conversation for like about 30 minutes. All the time, he had a body recorder on him, so the conversation was recorded and being listened to by the federal agents. And in that conversation, he was telling Mike that, hey, man, I came through looking for you yesterday. I'm trying to get an ounce of crack. And, they went back and forth for about 30 minutes. Mike was telling me, he's like, I don't got no drugs here right now. I don't like keeping drugs here. This is not a drug house. And Mike talked about the armed robbery that Jones had been arrested for, because everybody knew he had been arrested for the robbery. It was in the newspaper and then word on the streets. And Jones was telling Mike how he got away with like $70,000 and still had the money. They're going back and forth like that. So Mike told Melvin Jones, he was like, well, come back through later on. I might be able to sell you some drugs. So Melvin left. He came back through later on that day, just June 29th. He came back through for a second time that day. I wasn't at the house. Mike was there, and one of my co-defendants, Terry Wilson, was there. So this is when Mike sold Melvin Jones 8 grams of crack. So that sale right there was just charged to Mike in the indictment by itself. And Mike said, well, if you want some more, come back through later on. If I'm here, I'll give it to you. But if not, he pointed to my co-defendant, Terry Wilson. So Jones left. He gave the agents the 8 grams that Mike sold him. So that was a sale charge to Mike. He came back through that third time that day. I wasn't there. Terry Wilson was there. And he told Jones, wasn't no drugs there. So he left. He came back through a fourth time that day. This time I was there with about maybe 15 other individuals. We was barbecuing, drinking, playing video games, playing dice. Jones actually...
Just out of curiosity, how old were you at this time?
At that time, I had just turned 24.
Okay. I just turned,
because my birthday is June 21st, and I just turned 24. So Jones actually stayed at the house for maybe about an hour and a half. He's waiting for the drugs to come. And I'm on tape. Like I said, he had a body recorder on, so I'm on tape. You can hear me. I'm shooting dice. We're playing music, having fun, drinking, smoking pot. And finally, the drugs came. They were brought to the house by my co-defendant, Leroy Nolan. And it was testified at trial that Leroy came in the house, but he never came in the house. But long story short, Leroy gave the drugs to Terry Wilson, and Terry Wilson sold the drugs to Melvin Jones. It was 10 grams of crack. Now, in that sale, Terry Wilson, Leroy Nolan, and Mike Henderson were charged with that 10 gram sale of crack to Melvin Jones. So after that, he took those 10 grams back to the agents. There was never no more investigation or anything. And what I just said, that right there was taken to the grand jury almost a month later. An agent testified to what Melvin Jones didn't testify at the grand jury. The agent testified to what Melvin Jones told him, how it went, and what they heard on the tape. Of course, one of the questions that the grand jury asked was about me, because they were saying, based on what we heard, what does the gun, because Melvin Jones always said that I was in possession of a gun. So they were like, well, from what we heard, the gun never had anything to do with the drug dealing. It was always either he came through and didn't get drugs and he seen the gun, or he came through and got drugs and the gun wasn't there. But long story short, I ended up getting indicted with them, and it was a 4-count indictment. Count 1 charged me, Henderson, Terry Wilson, and Leroy Nolan, charged all 4 of us with a drug conspiracy. Count 2 charged just Henderson with the 8 gram sale of crack. Count 3 charged Henderson, Wilson, and Nolan with the 10 gram sale of crack. And count 4 charged all 4 of us with use and carry of a weapon doing a drug trafficking offense. So if I was on a 4-count indictment, I was named on count 1, the drug conspiracy, and count 4 was the use and carry of a weapon. And that was, we got arrested July 28th, 1993, and I didn't see the streets again until April 12th, 2019.
Jesus. As you were, that's crazy. So when you were arrested, you guys were all during the trial. Were you all tried together?
Yeah, well,
or did you plea or?
No, we went to trial, and my reason for going to trial, and let me just say this: I wasn't a saint, I wasn't an angel. You know, I was in the streets. I had been incarcerated before, but this case right here, my reason for going to trial, it wasn't that I was trying to, you know, I knew what was going on. I was there, but my whole thing was I wasn't involved. I didn't have anything to do with the 8 grams or the 10 grams that got sold to him. Because had I would have had something to do with it, I wouldn't have had no problem of taking a plea. I would have pleaded guilty and, you know, went and did my time. But this was my only reason of going to trial, because I honestly felt and knew that I didn't have anything to do with the case. So that's why I went to trial. But by me going to trial, my other 3 co-defendants, Henderson, Wilson, and Nolan, they ended up going to trial too. So all 4 of us went to trial, and all 4 of us started to go to trial together. But the week before we were supposed to start our trial, Henderson, which he was named in the indictment as the ringleader of the case, his lawyer had to have a triple bypass heart surgery. So they asked for a continuance. But me, Nolan, and Wilson, we were ready because we had been sitting in jail for like maybe 7 months, no bond, and we were just ready to get it over with. So we was like, we're ready for trial. So that they severed, the judge took Henderson off our case, and all 3 of us were supposed to go to trial a week later. But then on the day we were supposed to pick the jury, Leroy Nolan's lawyer reported to the judge that his client was possibly trying to get a government witness to commit perjury. So his lawyer filed to get taken off Leroy's case, which caused Leroy not to have a lawyer at the time. So Leroy got severed from our case. So it ended up being me and Wilson who went to trial first. We went to trial January 18th, 1994. And then in May, Henderson and Nolan went to trial.
Do you think that hurts you, being split off like that, or
No, well, see, actually, and as crazy as it is it didn't hurt me. I thought it would help me for the simple fact that by Henderson being named as the ringleader, and he was on all 4 counts of the indictment, and now we don't have him. But the only crazy thing, and I always remember this, is because at trial they got it was a federal case, but in the feds, one of the rules of criminal procedure, they got something called 404B conduct. And what 404B conduct is, it's not actual evidence. It's character evidence, and it's supposed to be used. You got to be careful when you're using it, because they saying if it's misused, it could be very prejudicial, prejudice towards the defendant. And when they took Henderson off the case, the judge made a clear announcement. He was like, now that Michael Henderson is no longer a defendant at these other 3 individuals' trial, his 404B conduct is inadmissible. And the judge made that announcement because your 404B conduct is character evidence against you, not against nobody else. So when Henderson got taken off the case, his 404B conduct was supposed to leave with him. The government, they agreed at that time, but when my trial started, they ended up bringing Henderson's 404B conduct into my trial, and that's what blew me out the water, because my whole trial was Henderson this, Henderson that, Henderson this, Henderson, and he's the ringleader. So the jury was bombarded with Henderson, the Henderson or because they named it, the government named it the Henderson Organization. So the jury was bombarded with that. And now they're looking at us and they're like, oh, wow, because it was portrayed that we were all workers for Henderson, like that. So what ended up being, when I just explained the 2 days of June 28th and June 29th, 1993, what our indictment said, what ended up being a 2-day case that we were defending at trial, it turned into a 5-year drug case, which is actually illegal, because it's, your indictment puts you on notice of what you're going to defend. And so that's what you set your defense up. So we set our defense up on the happenings of the 2 days in June of 93. We wasn't ready for the evidence that turned out to be 1988. It went back to the summer of 88 of Henderson dealing drugs to our arrest of July of 93. So what we were indicted on and what you took to the grand jury was a 2-day conspiracy. But then at my trial, you put on a 5-year conspiracy, which is, it was illegal. Had my lawyer would have appealed just that right there, nothing else, I would have got a new trial. I didn't find out I knew I got screwed, but it wasn't until years later, maybe like about 4 or 5 years after my trial, because I started spending time in the library and I actually started, reading and studying. I was like, man, this is how I got screwed around.
So you guys got convicted. When you heard the judge read that you were convicted, the jury was convicting you, what kind of thoughts were going through your mind? How much time did you think you were going to be serving?
Well, see, the federal sentencing is basically cut and dry when it comes to drug cases, because they got, the majority of them are mandatory sentences. Yeah. And back then, during the time I caught my case, 5 grams or more of crack carried a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years, a maximum of 40. But now if you had a prior drug offense, that 5 to 40 turned into 10 to life. And I had a prior drug offense, and it's called an 851 enhancement, which they filed an 851 enhancement on me. So I went from looking at 5 to 40 to 10 to life. And now when they said 10 to life, they also used that same drug prior. When they took it from 5 to 40 to 10 to life, they took that same drug case and they took a fist fight. I got in a fist fight when I was 18 years old at a bus station. And they took that fist fight and they took my prior drug case. So now I went from 5 to 40, from 10 to life to 30 to life. Just that quick. And the 30 was a mandatory minimum. And also the gun charge carried 5 years consecutive. So my minimum, even going into trial, knowing if I get found guilty, my minimum sentence was 35 years at 85%. That's like, that's like 30, almost 32 years straight.
And you said you knew that going into the trial, that if you
going into the trial, but the only thing I kept saying was, based on me knowing how it went, the case itself, I was saying, because the jury verdict has to be unanimous. And I just, for the world of me, I was saying no 12 people are going to find me guilty of this charge. I said at least one is going to say, just like the grand jury, when the grand jury said, well, the gun don't really got nothing to do with what. And I was thinking like one would have been like, well, this guy really didn't do nothing.
So why do you think the jury did? I mean, did you get to take the stand for yourself, or?
I wanted to take the stand. I wanted to get up there and tell my side. And I think later on, what I actually think was the jury never heard me. The only thing they heard was the government's version, through the Melvin Jones took the stand and one of Henderson's workers took the stand. They never heard from me. And if you think about it, it's just this scenario. If somebody's lying to you in your face, if it's a crowd of people and somebody's telling you, hey, I know that was you who took that old woman's purse in another side of town. The first reaction, you're going to say, nah, you're not just going to sit there and let somebody accuse you of something that you didn't do. The jury never heard me. You know, and I will say this, I was given 11 of my jurors was white. But I always say 12 because I did have a Hispanic, but he didn't have no accent. He didn't have no accent. So I was like, man, I got 12 people, you know, but I had 11 people, one Hispanic. One of my jurors he looked like he was in his 70s or late 60s. He was actually falling asleep in the jury box. I'm telling my lawyer, like, hey, the guy's up there asleep, you know. But I wanted to take the stand. My lawyer kept frustrating me because he was like, if you take the stand, they're going to bring up your past. But the whole thing is you use my past to take me from 5 to 40 to 30 to life.
Right.
You use my past to enhance my sentence. So, you know, he just kept frustrating me because I wanted to take the stand because they actually just laid it out with me. It's like, well, if Albert Edwards didn't have anything to do with this, who hangs out with drug dealers? You know, which one of the jury instructions was one of the, and I always remember this jury instruction where the jury was instructed that presence at the scene and presence and knowledge is not enough to establish guilt. The jury was instructed on that. And that's all they showed in my trial. They showed that I was there. They showed that I knew what was going on. But there was never nothing showing what I actually did. You know, because all the conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit an unlawful act. Me and you can agree to commit an unlawful act. We don't even got to do it. We can just say, hey, man, let's do X, Y, Z. All right, let's do that. And that's a conspiracy. But they never showed an agreement. They just landslided the jury with, hey, man, you know, they had the two sales. They had the two drug sales. And basically in my part, they was like, who hangs out with drug dealers? Because I remember the prosecutor at the end of my trial, he was like, Albert Edwards' attorney is basically just laying it out that Albert was just there, or who hangs out with drug dealers. And that's another reason why I wanted to take the stand, because the jury never knew that Michael Henderson is a childhood friend. We got arrested. This case happened when we was both 24. We had known each other since we was 8 years old. So that's why I was hanging with him, you know, but the jury never got to hear
Plus,
that.
So hanging out, I mean, would people in the jury think that hanging out with drug dealers is worth sending someone away for 30 years? I mean, that's just insanity, you know? Yeah,
and it is. And you know what? And that's another thing that they keep away from the jury. They don't tell the jury what your punishment is going to be. Right. You know, I'm pretty sure that they didn't realize that I was looking at a minimum of 35 years. You know, a minimum. You know, which, and another thing I'll add to that is crazy, is because you're subject to get more time when it comes to federal sentencing and punishment. You're subject to get more time on a drug case than you are on a violent case. You know, or even a terrorist case. I forget his name, but the guy who had the tennis shoe bomber, he was sentenced to 40 years. So I was sentenced to 36 years, 8 months. So I got a couple years lesser than a guy who was attempting to blow a plane out the air. You know?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And most it has changed a little bit for the better, but it needs to change a lot more, the sentencing guidelines. But even lawmakers don't know it. They don't even know what the laws are.
They don't, you know, it's like, okay, the sentencing guidelines have been around since 1987. The crack law came in in 1987, and they shoved it. The crack law shot through so quick. And I read some of the minutes from the crack law. You had a couple of one was out of Florida, and he gave a half something apology a couple years back. But one of the statements that he made was this. They said that we got this crack out here in the streets, and they associated with all the violence and women having the crack babies. They flooded all this stuff. We got to do something about this. And one of the statements that this politician made was, the ones who are out here selling this is young blacks and young Latinos. You made this statement, so you turn around and with this bill, you turn around and you made the punishment for crack 100 times worse than for cocaine. But the whole thing about it, you need cocaine to make crack. Without cocaine, you can't have crack. So crack is actually just another form of cocaine. It's like trying to convince somebody saying, well, there's a difference between an ice cube and water.
Yeah.
If I put this in the freezer, it's going to freeze up. So I would be trying to convince you saying, well, okay, that's not water no more. That's ice. There's a difference. They had, so that right there in itself, I'm not saying this because I had a crack case, but to me, that's one of the racist penalties, the 100 to 1.
Absolutely.
Because no way, like you got powder cocaine, you got crack cocaine. You could take a person, you could take 3 people. You could take a person who could snort powder cocaine. You could take a person who can shoot it, inject it, cocaine. And you could take a person who smokes, when they call it, and crack is a nickname. That's not even a scientific name. They call it cocaine based. But so you can take somebody who smoked cocaine based. You drug test all 3 of them. The results, if you get a positive reading, the positive reading is going to come back cocaine. It's not going to come back, he had cocaine in his system. He had crack in his system. It's going to come back cocaine. So that's the only drug in federal punishment that has 3 different punishments. As I tell you today, it has 3 different punishments right now, and it's the same drug.
It would be like, and maybe they do have this actually, different punishments for marijuana. If you're going to have a punishment for flour, if you're going to have a punishment for edibles, and then a different punishment for if people are using oils or so.
But it's all marijuana.
Yeah, it's all the same thing.
And when it comes to cocaine, when it comes to that, it's the same. I mean, I done read cases where the courts laid it out and they said this is the same drug. That's why you have a few judges who sentence, when it comes to cocaine base, they sentence it as if it's powder because they're saying that's all it is. It's cocaine. It's cocaine. You can put these little fancy names, and even the studies of when they associated all the violence, the cocaine babies, and they was all that came out to be there was nothing to support that. If you throw it out there and you spook everybody, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is what we got to do. But all the time, if you do your homework, that's why you got a couple federal judges that they'll tell you, don't come in here with that, even the 18 to 1. Obama lowered the penalties in 2010. And that's how I ended up coming home. They didn't make the law retroactive. When he changed the law in 2010, he didn't make it retroactive. Well, I would have came home in 2010. Donald Trump made it retroactive. I'm not ashamed to say that. Donald Trump made it retroactive in December 21st of 2018, and I ended up coming home in April of 2019. That's how I actually had 7 more years before I was released.
Let's take a real quick break here. I want to tell you guys about an awesome libertarian podcast. I know you guys think that Lions of Liberty is the only libertarian podcast out there, and we are great. I mean, it's awesome what we do here at Lions of Liberty, but there's other good ones too. In fact, there's a great one called Good Morning Liberty. It's hosted by our friends, Nate and Charlie. They've taken on the onus of trying to change people's minds of how people view libertarians. And they're doing this by leading with a message of compassion first. They're looking at the way in which policies impact people and using the principles of liberty to provide compassionate solutions. I know it's amazing, right? So much more effective than just typing loudly and screaming to yourself and commenting on Facebook statuses, but they're actually giving you tangible ways to talk to other human beings about how liberty is compassion. Amazing, right? So Nate and Charlie are two great guys, like I said. I think I said that at the beginning. They have a background in healthcare. They actually own a healthcare IT company. So at times like this and times of crisis that we have in this country right now, a great podcast to tap into to get their perspective. You can check it out 5 days per week. So if you need that daily hit of liberty, please check out Nate and Charlie over at Good Morning Liberty. Of course, you can find it on all the regular pod-catching apps, or you can just go to lol.gmlpodcast.com. Good Morning Liberty. Check it out. So tell me about that. So at what point, when did you find out that you were getting out?
Well, okay. Well, I've been following since, like I said, Obama changed the law in 2010. So once he changed the law, I was eligible to come home. So I had to go the rest of 2010, 11, 12, and so on. I wrote Obama 1,000 times saying, hey, won't you, okay, I understand that it has to go through Congress, but it's not moving like that right now. But won't you use your executive powers and just me and everybody else who's still stuck in prison under 100-to-1 ratio, where you'd have made it 18-to-1, why don't you use your executive powers and just adjust our sentence to what it would be to 18-to-1? Of course, that went unheard. But so once it was back in, it was back in August. It was August of 2018. They had a meeting in the White House. Lindsey Graham, Coyer out of Texas, Mike, he out of Utah. These was the hardliners. Chuck Grassley. It was some other one, because the bill that it's called the First Step Act. It shot through the House, shot through with the quickness in like 3 weeks. It stalled in the Senate because Chuck Grassley, Dick Durbin, and a couple more, they were saying this don't do enough. And that's when they added to make the Sentencing Reform Act retroactive. They added some more stuff, but that's what I needed.
I think it was Mike Lee and Rand Paul.
Mike Lee out of Utah, yeah. All of them met in the White House in August, because like I said, that bill is stalled. And so when it came in, they added that to it. So once from that conversation, I was like, man, I said, by them adding that sends me home. So once it did make it, then it kind of, if you remember, what's the name out of Kentucky? The leader, Senate leader.
Mitch McConnell.
McConnell was stalling. Everybody was getting on him. Donald Trump, he was like, get it to my desk, I'm going to sign it. So finally, McConnell called the vote. And once the vote got through and it passed, when it passed through the Senate, I knew I was coming home. So like I say, Donald Trump signed it on the 21st of December. And it was he signed on the 21st of December 2018. And I was eligible to come home. I filed my motion to be released January 2nd, 2019. My judge ruled on it he ruled on it in March 14th. He ruled on it, but he set me to be released 30 days later, which would have fell on the 14th, which was a Sunday. But because it fell on the feds, they don't release you on the weekend. You either gonna be lucky if your release date falls on a Saturday or Sunday, you're gonna get out Friday. And my release date fell on a Sunday, so that's why I got out Friday the 12th, April 12th. Been home ever since.
So what was when you got out? What was the first thing you wanted to do? Like go to a restaurant somewhere to eat, or what were you looking forward to?
I said this I started saying this like maybe my last 7-8 years before I was released. People used to ask me, they was like, man, what you gonna do the first thing when you go home? And I said, man, the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take me a bubble bath. So everybody used to be like, man. And I said, because you got showers in prison. That's all it is showers. And I took showers for so long, I said, man, I'm taking me a bubble bath, which even now, I've been home going on 14 months. Maybe 2 to 3 times out the week, I'll take a bath. I love baths. I love it.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing I did when I came home.
So how have you adjusted? It's been about a year, and it hasn't been a totally normal year for anyone, because in the past 3 months here, it's been crazy with the COVID stuff.
It's been crazy. But with me, the reason why it's been a whole lot easier is because I probably maybe like 15 years ago, I made my mind up that, you know, when I get released, because I was hoping to be released. So I told myself, and I'll say this, like my first like 12 years, my first 12 years of prison, I was a mess. I was a hot mess. I come in, I'm pissed off, I'm addicted, you know, just everything, you know, anger issues, everything. So I got in trouble. I got transferred around. I've been all over the country, and I ended up doing 13 months in solitary confinement, and that was the last straw, and that really kind of helped me, because in prison, you know, you got drugs in prison. You make homemade intoxicants. They call it hooch, moonshine. It's on, you know. And so that last time when I went to solitary confinement for those 13 months, I told myself, I said, man, I said, you can't keep, because my thing was I was always making excuses. Man, I got 36 years. I got to do almost 33 years. I'm going to be no good. You know, I'm going to get out a couple months before I turn 56 years old. So I use that as an excuse to be an a-hole, you know, and I've so finally, like I said, about 15 years ago, I told myself, I said, nah, enough of this. Get yourself together. Don't worry about your situation. Get yourself together. So when I did those 13 months of solitary confinement, and normally on the other cases when I went to solitary confinement, I would actually be, you know, I'm smoking pot in solitary confinement. I'm making wine in solitary confinement.
How are you smoking pot? How are you getting pot and making wine in solitary confinement?
Prison is creative. You got to remember, and then I was in federal prison, so I was around some of the most creative dudes. I mean, prison, that's a whole nother thing there. I mean, but yeah, it was smoking pot in solitary confinement, making intoxicants. But this time right here, when I did those 13 months, I was like, nah, I'm not going to do it, because this is the stuff that leads me in there. So I sobered up. And so after I did the 13 months in solitary confinement, I came back to general population. I stuck with it into the, you know, so, and it just got better. You know, I started attending AA and NA where I was in prison and everything. And I started programming self-help classes. I took a manufacturing class and just all kind of stuff. One of the classes, you know, dealing with my anger issue classes, positive attitude, just surrounding myself. And I said, man, in order for me, when that door opened, I got to be ready. So I just built myself up. And like my last 6 years in, it was a class. It's called 7 Steps, and it deals with recidivism, because this country has a high recidivism rate. You know, a lot of people who are released, the average is, you know, is 67.3% are going to return within 3 to 5 years.
That's crazy. You know?
Yeah. And then, because one thing about it is, it's like prison, and it's a book called New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Great read. It lays it out, the judicial system, and how, and it was maybe 2 years ago on CNN, it was a documentary called American Jails. That lays it out. It's a business. You know, people think that, oh, well, you know, they did wrong and they deserve. It's more of a business aspect than anything, because the budget for the American prison system, federal and state, is like, I know when that show, it's like $56 billion. And trust me when I tell you that money, because the prisoners, we're responsible for 85% of the labor in each prison. The inmates do everything from the plumbing to the cooking to the landscaping, electrical work, whatever. So it's like, okay, and then we got to pay for everything. We got to pay for our phone calls. We got to pay. You know, they give you one. I know in the Fed they give you one roll of toilet paper. That's why they give you one roll of toilet paper a week.
I saw a new thing. You got to pay to read books now, right?
They got to read books. They allowed us to buy MP3 players back in 2009. Come to find, and they sell us the songs. They got three ranges. Like one song, the cheapest is 85 cents. The next one is $1.25. The next one is $1.50. But the whole thing is okay, you can buy somebody's song, but where do you get the license or copyright to sell that song? So you might, and a lot of them songs, since I've been home, you can jump right on the thing and listen to it. So it's like you're taking these songs and you're selling them to the inmate. And so I'm like, whoa, what's up with that? But so I really, like I say, when I was released on April 12th, within 3 weeks, I had a job. And I've been working ever since. This is my third. I got my first two jobs. My first job, I was unloading semi trucks I was unloading semi trucks. That was through the temp agency. But what happened? I didn't know at the time what it was, because this was the first time happened. But I developed a cyst on my wrist. I didn't know what it was. My wrist just swelled up. It got to the point where I couldn't even lift anything. And but I'm trying to tough it out, because my whole thing was, man, I need my job. This is my income. So my mom, she was telling me, son, won't you go to? And at the time, I didn't have no insurance. I came home. The only assistance I got was from my family and a couple of friends. I didn't go get no assistance from any of the organizations, which there's plenty out there, but I didn't go. So she kept telling me, won't you go and get that checked out? And I said, Mom will be all right. But eventually it got to the point where I couldn't even lift with this arm. And somebody ended up going back telling the foreman that, hey, man, he's not really, he's not doing his part. And I had actually went to my coworkers and told them, I said, man, my wrist is messed up. I don't know what's wrong with it. I can't lift the heavy stuff. They were cool with that, so they told me to my face. But somebody ended up going back telling the foreman that I'm basically not lifting the heavy stuff. So when the foreman tried to get me to lift the stuff, I told him, I said, hey, man, my hand. And he's like, well, what happened? I said, I don't know. And he's like, did you hit it on anything? I was like, no, I didn't. No. I said, the only thing I can tell you is it wasn't like this before I came out here, but it's developed since I've been out here. So he wanted me to lift the heavy stuff. I told him I couldn't. So he told me, he said, well, if you can't lift what I need you to lift, we don't need you out here. So I basically got fired on the spot. And that's when I went to the clinic and found out what it was. It was a cyst. So I went like about a month and a half of not working and trying to let it, go down, which it did. So I got my second job at a place called Magna, and we make the lift gates for the Cherokee Jeeps. And that was through the temp service again. But the only thing, the money was good. But the only thing I had an issue with, because they kept saying that I had to be a temp between 12 and 14 months. And I was like, but I kept working there, but I told myself, I said, I need a permanent job. So I ended up finding a permanent job. So I put in my 2 weeks notice from Magna, and I got the permanent job where we make like 6 different parts for the Harley Davidson motorcycle. I've been there going on 8 months now. So I got that's my income.
That's awesome.
I'm sitting in my apartment. This is my apartment I'm sitting in. I done had this for 6 months. I had my car for like 8 months, which I got past some little problems with it. So I just had to go buy another car. So I got to get rid of my first car. But everything's been, I just had my mind made up. I haven't drank since I've been home. So I've been sober since I've been home. No type of drugs, which I can't do drugs anyway because I'm on federal paper, but
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't matter. Illinois now is, recreational use, which I still wouldn't be able to do, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't got the desire to drink or get high. And things just, I came home with no credit. I got a 706 credit score. The goal is, eventually, to be excellent. Actually, my plan is sometime next year, maybe the end of next year, I want to buy a house. So I got myself together. And like this situation now that's been going on for the last 2 months, it hasn't affected me based on, like I said, I sat in prison for almost 26 years, and this right here, what's going on here is a piece of cake. It's real. People are getting sick and people are dying, but I'm not letting it run my life. I'm still, the only way it affected me, I was unemployed for 3 weeks. And that was it, based on the virus.
Yeah. I think just the whole thing you laid out there, how while you were in prison, when you were put back in solitary again and you made a decision that you were changing right then. And from then on out, kind of everything you've been doing has been leading you forward. And then it's just kind of stacked on top of each other. And then you've gotten out, and then you're just not allowing yourself. I mean, it really goes to show you how much of life is just, it's in your mind. It's between your ears. It's the decisions you make, and it's what you accept. And I just think, I think you have a great story. And it's so crazy. I mean, I think it's weird to say this, but looking back and hearing your story, that part of your life where you had that screwed up trial where you end up getting more time than your co-defendants, but that's just contributed to your overall story. I mean, that was learning experience in itself.
Yeah, it was. And see, like and my thing was, and I'll say, because like I said, I wasn't no saint. I was dealing drugs. I just didn't get caught at this particular time of the drugs I was dealing. I got pulled in on my childhood friends. So I looked, my first, and that was a part of my first 12 years because I was playing the victim role. This ain't my case. I got more time than anybody, my co-defendants, and for what? So I was running with that. And it was finally when I had to tell myself, I said, hold on, now pump the brakes. You were out there, breaking the law. You were, so now I would say that I was convicted of my lifestyle, because even if I wouldn't have got caught up on my friend's case, I was still out there dealing drugs. I was, so I had to come with ease with that. Then I had to accept, well, what did I contribute to it? Okay, yeah, I did. I had a messed up trial. I had a public defender that didn't fight for me, and what may be but how did I contribute to that? You didn't cut, like right now, I'm working. I get up and I go to work every day. I'm sitting in my own home. So I don't have to worry about law enforcement coming up to my job, wanting to question me. I don't got to worry about them knocking on my door or kicking my door in. I conduct myself as a law-abiding citizen. That's, so now when I see the police, I can wave. I don't have to, because once upon a time, I had drugs or a gun on me. Now I just got my driver's license and my credit cards and my debit card. So it's the transformation for me, because like I say, I made my mind up. In the mind, once we make our minds up, it could be to do something negative. It could be to do something positive. Once your mind is made up on what you want to do. And that's moving forward, I'm taking baby steps and I'm adding on. And it's a book that I recommend to the listeners. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Oh, I've read that book.
You read that?
Yeah.
So
It's an incredible book, man. Yeah.
The crazy thing about that book is I had made that transformation prior to me reading the book.
Really?
So when I read the book, the book gave substance and a title to what I had already did. So it just blew. It took me 4 months to read that book because I might start chapter 1. It might take me 10 days because I done read it some because I'm absorbing it because it gave a substance and a title to what I had actually done, and that's why I recommend it to people. I said read that book because we're so. And one of the things that the book always says is focus because it starts with the thought. You know, this video, this equipment, technology, everything started with a thought. So it tells you to focus on your thoughts. Think about what you're thinking about because that's going out there. And I say all the time, I always say to people, you know, same thing with this virus. People are, well, I hope I don't get it. And I say, I'm not going to get it. Focus and put out the thought that what you want to happen and not what you don't want to happen. You know, so I would, you know, that book, it woke me up on that. You know, pay attention to your thoughts. You know, think of what you want going on in your life and what you don't. And my whole thing is because my mind is set up and I'm totally focused. This is actually the longest I've been out in society. I started I started going to the county jail at 17 years old. I'll be 51 next month. This is the longest I've been in society as an adult. June 12th will be 14 months I've been home, and those 14 months has been the longest I've been in society as an adult straight. Because 99% of the stuff I used to do, 100% of the thinking and the attitude that I used to have is totally gone, and that goes with that book. Breaking the habit of being yourself.
It's Joe Dispenza, and that I will say this to the listeners out there: it's a book you got to be ready for because it's going to challenge. It's going to challenge your beliefs. If you're one of those people who thinks that life just kind of happens and it's all random, it's going to challenge that, and it makes you really, really think about and embrace that. You know, really, you create your own future. Your personality becomes your reality. So it's a fascinating book, and I'm just like you. It took me forever to read that book because I kept rereading pages over and over again. But
oh my goodness, yeah. Matter of fact, I'm getting ready to go get it again because I left mine. I left mine once I finally did finish reading it while I was in. Matter of fact, it was Ford who told me about it because he had it first.
Oh, yeah?
And he was like, "Man, you need to read this," and I ended up having somebody order it for me. And I read it, and it blew me away. Even that, and like I say, what just made it so much. It added substance and it added a title to what I had already did anyway. Because I knew, in order for me to have a chance, once I finally made it in society, I had to come home a totally different person. Because my way always got me in trouble, you know. So I had to push all that to the side, my anger issues, greed, I had to get all that out of me, negative attitude, everything, and start all over. And I added on. So that's why, since I've been home, everything that I've accomplished, and I continue to push myself. This is what I said I was going to do anyway. And I always know because I got a nice following on Facebook. And I always put it out there that, you know, this is just my story, but we all got a story to tell, you know. And I try to, you know, I'm not ashamed to put it out there, you know, by me having my past, because in my hopes is eventually, because like right now I'm just building credibility to be able, so other inmates who will be released, whether they did a year, 10 years, or whatever, letting them know. And I used to always say this in the class, the recidivism class that I help facilitate. I used to always say, you got to give yourself a chance, you know, because guys would always come back saying, I couldn't get a job, this or that, this or that. The three main things that a person returns to prison for is going to be either you went back to a life of crime, substance abuse, or domestic abuse, the domestic violence. Those are any guy who basically returned back is one of those three things, you know. And like I haven't went back to doing crime. I don't drink or do drugs, and I'm single. You know, that's even something that I said that, you know, I'm giving myself a chance because I just came from a situation of being confined. And I'm the type of person, I like putting my all in. If I'm gonna do something, I don't like half doing it. When I was in the streets, I put my all in, even though it was negative. I give it my all. At my job, I give forth my best effort. Because I want to be held accountable for the things I do. And like today, I think I conduct myself as a law-abiding citizen. I'm not mad. The 20 I did 25 years, 8 months, and 22 days. I can't get that back. I'm not trying to play catch up. My biggest loss and my biggest hurt was my son. My son was murdered June 2nd, 2013. He was 24.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I got sentenced to 36 years, 8 months when I was 24. He lost his life, and he ended up, and I know the whole thing. That's why it's so powerful to have that family structure and to have a positive role model. It don't, you just got to get that positive role model. It's so bright. Like right now, I'm building my credibility because eventually I want to get off into the field of setting up some programs where I could talk to these, the younger kids and then everything, younger adults, and be like, look, once you got a chance. See, because once upon a time, I didn't think once I got my first felony, I was like, man, I'm a felony. It's over with, man. I fooled myself. I tricked myself into thinking I would never have a chance in the working world. Who's going to give me a job? I'm a felony. And I brought into that. That's not true. My where I work at is fellas out there. It's what you want with your life. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of being incarcerated. I'm 32 years of my 50 years right now has been spent in jails and prisons. So I'm trying to do, I don't know how much longer I got, but for however long it is, I'm trying to spend the rest of my life as a free, law-abiding citizen where, I don't want a lot. I just want to make it. I'm not trying, and I want to help as I go along. That's why I always say on my Facebook page is I'm here to help build. I'm not, I don't know how much you use Facebook. It's a lot of negativity on there.
It's all negativity, yeah.
Yeah, it's like everybody's trying to outdo everybody and being negative. Bash. Oh, and my page is, people tell me, I actually before this happened with the lockdown and all that last year, like in the fall and summer, people I didn't even know would actually come to me and shake my hand and say, hey, man, I like the message that you put out on your page. You stay positive, you stay uplifting, because, we don't need to be down. That you can be down on if that's the choice, because everything is a choice. That's another thing with that book. You got a choice. See, people don't understand, because once upon a time, I didn't understand that I got a choice to be who I really want to be and to be what I want to be and set the direction of I want. I got a choice. So I can't change my past. I can't change that. But I weigh in on what I do today and what I do tomorrow, what I do next week, next month, and next year. I understand. So that's how I move.
Yeah, I believe that. Well, Albert, we are out of time today. If you just want to let the audience know, maybe if they want to follow you on Facebook, or if you want to leave, I don't have any other social media sites you want to leave here, but
okay,
plug away.
Well, I'm Facebook, Albert Edwards. That's me, and I love to hear from everybody, weigh in and whatnot. And this is where I am. This is my story. I'm a work in progress. But I'm going in the right direction. I'm glad I'm home. My mom just turned 76 back in March. That first birthday with her in X amount of years. I got 5 grandkids. I got a beautiful daughter. So I keep it simple, and I'm just glad to be home, and I'm living a good life. I'm enjoying it, and I'm gonna continue to enjoy it.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. Maybe in a couple months we'll have you and Carl on the show together, and we'll do a little.
Be in on it. Just let us know.
Do a roundtable show. All right, sounds good. Thanks, Albert.
Okay. All right, thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Another great episode of Felony Friday. As you know, Felony Friday is one of 3 shows we have here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, we kick off every single week with our Monday show hosted by Mark Claire. It's our longest running program, our flagship program, where Mark interviews leaders in the Liberty movement. Every Wednesday, we have Electric Liberty Land hosted by Brian McWilliams. It's your weekly shot of culture, comedy, liberty, swearing, and just good fun. Check that out. You can get all 3 shows by subscribing for the great price of $0 per month. You get everything that we have here. So please check everything out. And if you like it all, please consider supporting what we're doing here at Lions of Liberty. A great way to do that is by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. You can do that by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Another great way of doing that is by following, liking, sharing our stuff on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Lions of Liberty. On Instagram and Twitter, we are at Lions of Liberty. And the discussion forum where all the greatest and brightest minds go to talk about politics, liberty, everything that's happening in the world today, current events, the Lions of Liberty Forum on Facebook, which you can find by typing Lions of Liberty Forum in the search bar at the top of Facebook, clicking search, comes up, say you want to join it, answer a question, bam, you're in, and the rest is just going to be a great journey for you. So check that out. That's all I have for today. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.